Now, let us take an example on addressing resource loading. We are presented with this information, and as we are familiar with this information, I wouldn't belabor the time in trying to explain what these informations mean. Now, this information is enough to draw a precedence diagram, a bar chart, and a resource histogram. So we shall proceed and draw the bar chart and the resource histogram first, and then secondly, draw the precedence diagram, determine the critical path and the floats. This will then help us to do an adequate resource smoothing. So let's have our chart, and we have activities A to G. So we have activity number on the vertical axis and the entire duration on the horizontal axis. So we start with activity A, which has no predecessor, with a duration of 3. Activity B has a 1-day duration. C also has a 1-day duration with precedence predecessor as A. And we have activity D having B as its predecessor, activity E having C as its predecessor, activity F has D and E as its predecessors, and activity G of duration 2 days having activity F as its predecessor. Now we have resources in the column, so we shall put the resources per day and determine the total resources for each day till the 12th day. So we have the resource per day for A as 3, for B as 4, for C as 5, for D as 2, for E as 3, for F as 2, and for G as 3. So the total resources are as indicated on the total resources row. Now let us proceed and draw the resource histogram. So we have the first bar for day 1, second bar for day 2, third bar for day 3, the fourth bar is 9 for day 4, day 5 is 5, day 6 is also 5, day 7 2, day 8 2, day 9 2, day 10 2, day 11 3, day 12 3. From the table, we produced the bar chart and the resource histograms as shown on the right. Now we have an available resource of 7, which means any resource above 7 would have to be smoothing. And we'll see that in the next slide. Assuming that the resource available is 7, we have to do resource smoothing. So let's move on to the next slide. Now let us continue to solve the problem we started solving from the previous slide. On this slide, we are going to draw our precedence diagram and calculate our critical path and the float. Having the float, the critical path, and the Gantt chart, which we worked on the previous slide, we can then draw our resource histogram and perform the resource smoothing that is required to enable this project run smoothly. So we repeat the same information and try to work on the precedence diagram. So we are quite familiar with this process. So we bring in our PDM notations and have our linkages drawn. And then we fill the tables or the PDM notations with the forward pass and backward passes informations. So we can then determine the critical path and the paths that are not on the critical path. So we realize that A, B, D, F, and G have zero floats, and they represent the critical path of this project. The non-critical parts of the project are the activity E and C. So critical path is A, B, D, F, and G. The float is 3 for activity C and activity E respectively. So we will move to the next slide and perform the resource smoothing based on the resource histogram we worked on in the earlier slide. Now let us continue to address the resource challenges we have. I'm going to present the bar chart and an indication of the level of resources we have. So the red line shows the limit of our resources before the resource smoothing. And in order to perform the resource smoothing, we would have to draw another chart and indicate the way some resources will be moved within their floats from one point to the other in order to address the resource loading issue. So we have our chart well labeled, and we start with the drawing of activity A, and we draw activity B, and these two activities are on the critical path and therefore cannot be moved. But activities C and E can be moved within their floats, which is 3, to resolve the resource loading issues. So we can see that from the histogram. So move activity C by 3 days, and then we'll move activity E also by 3 days. So activity C will be moved from its original position, as we can see in the dashed line, 3 days forward. And then we have activity D, which is on the critical path and cannot be moved. But activity E has also been moved 3 days forward. And activity F is also on the critical path and remains where it is. And activity G also remains where it is. Now let's indicate the resources per day for each activity and have the total resources available. Now we are going to draw the resource histogram to see how it looks compared to the initial one. So we have our forecast or total resources available. And since we have 7 as our resources, we have to indicate that and start drawing our histogram. So we have these activities. Day 1, day 2, day 3 are all 3. Day 4 has been reduced by 5, so it has been modified. That's why I indicated that in red. Day 6, day 7, day 8. Day 8 has also been modified, but let's complete drawing the entire histogram before we do the modification for those activities that need to increase or reduce. So we have this. So day 7 has increased by 5 per what we see by the movement of activity C forward by 3 days, which has a resource loading of 5, making it a total of 7, and that is below the 7 mark, which means that the available resources of 7 has been achieved. For the next activity, that would also increase to 5, and the third would also increase to 5. So let's look at the loading profile. So we have 4, 4, 4, 3, 5, 5, 0, 2, 2, 5, 4, 4. This is a difference between the available resources and the total resources or the forecasted resources. So we have completed the resource smoothing. We have moved some activities forward so that the available resources can be used for them without importing any resource from outside, which would end up increasing the cost of the project. The resulting bar chart and smooth histogram as shown at the right compared with the histogram before the smoothing, which is shown below. So comparatively, the bar, which is above the 7, has been reduced. We will look at other examples that further explain some complex projects and how resource smoothing was carried out on these projects.